I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good. In the packet that you received from Betty, you have the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody read them, and do they have any comments? Hearing none, I ask if there's a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Hearing none, we are unanimously approved.
Just a point of clarification, you have appointed Belinda to sit as a full member, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I can vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks, Betty.
Congratulations. Have another piece of cake.
So on the chairman's report, there's really just the one item, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, the Earth Day, Kids Day, Healthy Kids Day on Saturday, the 26th of April. I may have a conflict that's coming up that's changing my calendar flow, and I was wondering. I know Jeff, you're planning to be there.
Yes.
And we have some graphics and a table to be set up where we can man that stand for 2 hours or 3 hours.
What we did last year is our displays are in a room inside the Y on easels rather than outside being susceptible to having the wind blow them over. So we had hopefully it's not a rainy day where everybody else is inside, but we'll have a space inside where we can set up our easels in our what we're calling our exhibit of the Fairfield Shore area.
Great. Is there anyone who could possibly attend if I'm unable to?
I have a 2:00 appointment in Bridgeport, but I can attend prior to that.
Okay.
So I can be there in the morning.
I mean, if things change, I won't be able to be there. If they don't change, I'll plan to be there. But I'll coordinate with you.
Okay.
But you may want to go anyway. The other item has to do with we were talking about the Exide ownership of the Tide Mill Dam and the damaged sluice that needs to be repaired, and who's going to be responsible for doing so.
We received a request from an upstream property owner to figure out how to address the lack of repair of the tide gates. And the upstream property owner said, well, you also talked with him, Brian, sent some pictures showing that one of the tide gates is missing. We then did some research, and we found that during the course of the Exide remediation project, it was determined that the dam and the tide gates the dam had to be repaired or should be repaired, and the tide gates replaced during the remediation work to make sure that there was no issues with discharges downstream. So the Exide was the applicant for the approval, and the approval was granted by DEEP with the condition that the certificate holder, meaning the person with the permit, is responsible for maintaining the structures in good condition. So now the question is, if the structures are not in good condition, who is responsible? Because Exide is no longer apparently available to do that. So we've inquired of DEEP. The DEEP person who will be responsible for looking into this said he's trying to figure out what to do, because the permit was written not with anticipation, I guess, of repairs and maintenance in the future. So he's trying to figure out what to do, and we'll await his guidance. The Conservation Department put together a nice video of the functioning of the tide gates, or the lack of functioning at both high tide and low tide. DEEP has that. So we're essentially waiting for that, but he did say it would help if we put together, and we said we were going to do this last month, a letter from the Harbor Commission asking DEEP to investigate this and take the appropriate action to ensure that the structures are maintained in the future. But that's all I know, that, other
So
than.
it's a standby.
He's working on it, yes.
It's a standby, we'll keep our eye on it. Meantime, the damaged, gate doesn't get fixed, and that, I don't know if that causes problems to, water quality in terms of fish.
Does Town Public Works, are they aware of the situation?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But they're not the permittee, or.
They don't, is
responsible.
it a town-owned property, or is it
It's not town-owned.
not?
Town cannot do work on private property.
Okay, any questions on that topic? Moving on now to the old business, Lower Wharf build with your mouth full of frosting, Jeff.
I'm sorry, I noticed that there's two pieces here for me, but
Better start going then.
the DEP,
Make sure that's in the minutes.
I forgot, it's being recorded.
No, you said 2 pieces.
Well, the DEP posted a notice on the website of their intention to issue the permit that we've applied for. So there's a comment period, and as we would normally do, we would respond to this deep notice. In this instance, it's the commission's project. And Bill wasn't in, I didn't see him this afternoon, but he's looked at this, and I didn't see that there were anything unusual. So with that assumption, and I'll talk with Bill Hurley, the town engineer, tomorrow, but with that assumption, I think that it would be appropriate for the commission to respond to this notice, with a statement of support, as we did when the application was submitted.
Did you need something from Bill Hurley this week, because he is out of the office?
That's what I thought.
I have, an email from Bill that's kind of says exactly what Jeff is saying. He says, yes, I thought, DEP intends on issuing the permit and so forth. Is that what you mean? It's a verification of what Jeff said.
But I think the commission should write to DEP in response to the public notice in the public comment period. Of course, it's expressing support for the issuance of the permit, provided that the town engineer doesn't see anything in the conditions that would be objectionable, which I don't think that there would be.
Okay.
And we can send a letter next week.
Okay.
But it would be a statement of support, just as we did when the application was submitted to DEP.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions?
I have, I think I need some clarification. You know, we have a Lower Wharf subcommittee, and George and Belinda and myself had been working on the risk management and signing project and all, and came to a conclusion. I just want to make sure we understand what, if anything, we should be focusing on going forward. Because we've been having and canceling meetings because we have nothing immediately on our agenda. Is it the case that as the Lower Wharf comes closer to actually being constructed, that we'll be involved with that as a subcommittee or not?
That seems logical. As the permitting phase continues to move along as it is, really in Jeff's hands, and he can report on that. When it comes down to the action and things going on, maybe then, there'll be more of a role for a subcommittee to act.
Well, the next step now in the regulatory process is to get TP&Z approval of this. Bill and I are going to work on the submittal to TP&Z. This requires a coastal site plan review, but it would be done administratively. That doesn't require a public hearing. At least that was what we were told. And what we have to include in the application to TP&Z is the same measures that Engineering and Public Works included in their application for the work at Perry Green, which is what measures are we going to employ around the structures to protect the harbor.
But that permitting process is in your hands. He's asking what the subcommittee actually
I don't want to
is doing.
duplicate what Jeff or anybody else is doing. On the other hand, we keep having to cancel meetings that we schedule. Maybe we should cancel all of them. Maybe I need some direction.
Well, would it make sense to put it aside on the slow burner until all the work is ready to begin?
We could do that, because as I mentioned, I think there's going to be a lot of need for communication with the the neighborhood, with the town, with many others, and perhaps some, I don't know, some decisions about aesthetics or I don't know. But I just wondered what the lower wharf committee should be doing.
Well, I would just wait for the permits to be in place and the work to be ready to begin, and then that will all become clear to you to be able to then define it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
We'll wait for some direction from yourself too, as to when you need us to do things or look at things, as a committee
Okay.
versus what Jeff and Bill Hurley are doing and Devin and so forth.
Right, so I mean, we'll hear the reports from Jeff on this, and as it progresses, we will decide. Okay, anything further on that? Moves us to raise Bill 6914.
Well, this is taking a lot of our attention, not just here, but in all the other towns with harbor management commissions also. So there was a House Bill 6914 that was supported by Fairfield's delegation. And this would clarify the importance of all harbor management commissions in response to the uncertainties created by a court case that said, among other things, the Harbor Commission has no authority to review and make comments on deep applications. So that bill, though, was a statement of objection to that bill was made, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, by the DEP commissioner, who, in my opinion and others, misrepresented the intent of the bill or misunderstood the intent, because her opposition stated that it was an effort for municipalities to have veto authority over deep decisions. That's not the case. Subsequently, a substitute bill was introduced, and the substitute bill was introduced with the support of DEEP. And the substitute bill does not eliminate any of the uncertainties, but in our opinion and the opinions of others, would further diminish Harbor Commission authority by saying that any recommendation a Harbor Commission would make has to be based on what's already in the plan, rather than application of the policies in the plan. So now there's discussion about how that substitute bill might be withdrawn. DEEP agreed last week. Mr. Thompson, who is the director of the Land and Water Resources Division, agreed to meet with several representatives, including the mayor of New London, to discuss this. And again, today he agreed, and that meeting is trying to be set up now to see if we can correct the misunderstandings and just try to work together to come up with a bill that doesn't ask or achieve anything more than what DEEP has already approved in the harbor management plans that they've approved. And of course, it affects what we're doing now and with the update of our plan. So there'll be more to talk about, and I know Kim has been talking with members of Fairfield's delegation. We may have to, recommunicate with them now as well. And there's a meeting in Stamford tonight at 6:30 to discuss some of this. So it's very interesting. It affects every town. And I'll continue to do the best I can to try to address this.
So in the instance that the raised bill fails or the substitute bill succeeds, it will change the nature of how, the harbor management commissions, and ours included, will be able to comment to DEEP on projects. So in order to get around that, or not to get around that, to make sure that our interests are maintained, we want to make sure that our harbor management plan encompasses all of those necessary items that we would want to be able to comment on, and make that clear, because that's what the current precedent or the lawsuit suggests, and that's what the substitute bill calls for.
It's quite complicated, and someone this morning I was talking with was very frustrated by all the people that are involved and the lack of information and the lack of coordination. And actually, there was a representative from another town who mentioned to the Harbor Commission chairman in that town that he voted for the substitute bill because he understood that it was just a placeholder while we work on a better bill. But again, no one had ever. It's somewhat frustrating, but that's.
Okay, so we're maintaining our attention on that. Now, any questions or further comments on that? Mr. Warren and Mr. Leclerc, would you give us a report on the mooring committee?
Did we skip over the harbor master report?
We did.
So-
We did.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few things. We've awarded one new mooring this year to the person who's actually second on the waiting list, because the gentleman who was first chose to not renew his position on the waiting list after all these years. Surprisingly, I've tried reaching out to him multiple times. He did not submit the money, didn't respond to repeated emails, phone messages, even at his work where I tracked him down.
Wow.
So he got his notices, so he's done. And we gave it to the gentleman who was second on the list, who's extremely excited and has gone out and bought a new boat already. And it's being built. It should be here in a few weeks. He bought a beautiful 26-foot center console, the Carolinas. It'll be up here shortly. The position he was given was, if you remember last year, Mr. Frostick passed away, and the family had asked for the surviving spouse to have his mooring. Well, I indicated to them that I would need a safe boating certificate from the surviving spouse, plus the registration, plus the insurance certificate. And that's when they told me first that really they would be driving the boat, not Mom. And I told them that doesn't work that way. Mom has to get the safe boating and the vessel. And then that was the last we heard from them. And they didn't acknowledge any further emails, so I canceled their mooring and gave it to the gentleman on the list. So that's how we're moving forward. A few other people have gotten new vessels. We're able to accommodate all of them without moving folks around. Some people are looking for different mooring locations, and we try to accommodate when we can, but it's difficult. We had a triangular move we were trying to do, and that ended up not working out with the boat. So everything is fitting into place. I met with Travis once. I'm going to be meeting with him again later this week about the yacht club and the management of the moorings and putting them in. They're in. They look good. We're ready to go here. All the moorings are in, I should say, except Perry Green. They were not put in off of Perry Green because while the cleats are on the wall, the Perry Green is not finished yet. They haven't seated it. And if we put the moorings in, that's going to suggest that people can just go and put their boats there, which means they'll be walking across a construction site because that's how they get to their boats. So because of that, I've talked to Justin Cathcart. The few that come from the town are going to remain relocated at South Benson until we can put them in, as they were last year. We can put them in the harbor. And the folks that I have, we're making other arrangements like we did last year temporarily. We're hoping they're going to seed it any day now, and that it grows quick enough that by the end of June, we're able to use that property. The fences will leave, and then we can put the moorings out and relocate the boats there. So that's good to go. But speaking with some of my colleagues, other harbor masters, and some dialogue about how we manage our moorings and how they manage their moorings. Some are interested in our system because we have less of a free-for-all, it seems, in some communities where people could put a mooring anywhere and then ask permission. So we've been just, kind of informational that way. And last, Army Corps of engineers came back yesterday. They're going to be there today on the water and probably tomorrow. They want to survey the area where the shellfish bed was created offshore to see what it looks like, how it weathered the last few months, how the sand is dispersing, and they're keeping a close eye on that because they're very interested in how that's worked out. And that's all I have.
Thank you. My apologies for skipping over.
No.
Now you can go again with Mr. Warren for the mooring committee.
Well, the mooring committee did not meet last month, so I don't really have a report. We do have a meeting scheduled for May. I suspect that we will not meet because I don't think we probably have anything to discuss. I think Belinda's on the committee now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So my next meeting schedule after that was in September, I think. And so my plan is to try and get facts and figures from Betty after the end of the fiscal year, put together a report so we can look at expenses, revenues, and our current balance in the town account so that we can plan for the next year. So I think we will keep that meeting so we can do that. And that's my report.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions?
We need to complete the annual report this year. So maybe I can talk with you about the number of mooring permits last year, and then we'll talk about our accomplishments, and I think we should also have a little section recognizing the passing of Pat and Mary and Lou, but just get that out by the end of the month. In previous years, we distributed that in April when the mooring permits go out, but
I can just, yeah,
Process now.
now we communicate, you know, via
Yeah.
email, so I can do blasts
Yeah.
through online moorings.
So maybe you and I could work on that a little bit.
Fine.
Thank you.
Any other questions related to moorings? Moving now to the Harbor Master boat request. George, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Hope you saw the draft of the harbor master responsibilities that were included with the agenda, and looked it over. These were put together by me and also run by with the harbor master and the chairman to look at. So we think they're fairly broad. We wanted to keep them broad and not, you know, pin down too much as far as the responsibilities, you know, stipulating what dates and times and stuff. But we think we covered everything here. Any questions on that?
The only thing, does there need to be any recognition of the relationship between the harbor master and the assistant harbor master? Or any discussion about that? I mean, I don't, you know, the role, the relationship, the share, I don't, you know.
We could, it's short because instead of separate duties, it's any duties as assigned by the harbor master. And he can do things in my absence, as necessary, you know, or concurrent with me for that matter, if there's abandoned boats, you know, you've got the same powers.
Would it be useful to have a sentence in there that spells that, just that out? Just
That's a good idea, yeah, it's a good idea.
So that,
And we believe there'll be an assistant harbor master from now through perpetuity.
I believe that's why the commission did, I think it was under you, Kim, they created an assistant, because there was a bad situation before, essentially before me, immediately before me,
We
when
had
my
a harbor master
predecessor,
resign in June.
and that's, and if a harbor master should die or resign in an untimely, dying is always untimely, he should not be able to serve, such as when mooring permits are being issued, you know, in that window of time, no one else can do it. So you have a free-for-all in the harbor, and people could put their boats on moorings, they don't belong, and no one can do anything about it, removing boats, and
Good point.
that was an issue. Luckily, it was in June, even then there were some issues that, until I was appointed formally, it took to the end of the year, after the season to get me in. So that was the thought is, and I think it's a good idea, it's a great idea.
So adding some language about the,
just a sentence or two, because I believe there's a second document somewhere that spells out the assistant.
There's a job description for John.
I'm not sure where that is.
When we interviewed
But
John.
didn't that come up under your watch?
What?
The job description for John. Remember we
Assistant.
The job description, we just
took mine and just,
based it off the harbor master description.
Well-
We didn't know.
maybe we don't need to add that to this. Maybe we just have two job descriptions. One for the assistant and one for the harbor master.
Or just show how there's a relationship. I think just as you just said,
I think it was like only to assist the harbor master as requested or delegated with the following, then it took my job description.
The statutes describe the relationship between the harbor
Right.
master and the deputy harbor master, who's also appointed by the governor.
Right.
So it's, forget the language in the statute, but,
John, were you appointed by the governor?
yes.
So,
Okay, I'll check the statute, I can get that.
And yes, I think we should keep one. I think it's just a smart thing to do
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
for many reasons. Even when I'm not around, if I should leave
And
for a
that-
weekend on vacation, I need someone.
That was because only the harbor master has the authority to issue a mooring permit.
Right.
So if there's no harbor master, you can't issue the mooring permit.
Makes sense. Okay, I will work on that and revise this draft.
so that would be an easy change. It wouldn't change the substance of this harbor master document, which the reason why we wanted to do that today for this meeting was to have the harbor master job description match the request for a boat, and therefore a boat would. So this calls for a harbor master on the water, and I think we've all recognized that when 1994 the harbor management plan was put into place, the harbor was used in a very different way than it is today with all the stand-up boards, kayaks, et cetera, et cetera. There's more activity than there was. That doesn't mean it's a a large patrol boat with, gun turrets and things like that. But an appropriate boat that kind of matches this. So I guess the next step would be for you guys to, and Brian to identify the boat, and then we approve of that boat. But that's where this is all headed.
We can come up with a spec for a boat, but we can't say this is the boat because it has to go through town purchasing.
Okay, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yes, and there was some conversation at the last meeting about what type of boat was required, what size of boat was required, and Mr. Harbor Master did some research on that and got it to me recently. So the one that we were looking at originally, there are ways to get that price down to closer to $55,000.
What was that boat?
That boat was a
Maritime skiff?
Yes, maritime skiff, 18-foot with a 90-horse engine.
I looked at the second one this week and actually looked at a 15-foot Montauk by Whaler, because they had one in stock in Norwalk. We actually go look at one center console, and that's another viable option as well.
Right. You told me that would be $48,000 and that's a 15 with a 60 horsepower engine. My feeling is that we want to buy something, or we want to appropriate for something that's going to last for the next 20 years and not, be something where we find we need a bigger boat or something that has to be
a new engine if we bought it.
Right, new engine,
Yeah.
something like that.
Did we confirm how the maintenance would work? Would that be through the town? Would it be then included in the town fleet and therefore maintained with?
The only thing I can speak to on that is I did talk to the Shellfish Commissioner, and he maintains the boat that they have, which is a town boat.
He doesn't individually?
Yes. So I think that's changing the oil once a year, something like that. With something like this, who would I talk to? Town Public Works, or who runs fleet stuff?
On the boats, I'm not certain.
Could you
Might with
maybe
the
start
fire
with the
department.
police?
They have, I know that their engine is serviced in Norwalk somewhere, 'cause I was with them and they had an engine problem the year before last. It malfunctioned on us when we were,
Okay, just want to make sure we
they don't do
know.
it. They're Tom and
Jeff?
Jeff weren't doing it.
I want some clarification. The requirement for regular patrols is a significant change from what's been done in the past. And are you saying that the reason for that is because we have more paddle boarders and kayaks? That's the reason that we need regular patrols?
Not just that. I think that we've seen, with Brian on the water, we've seen a lot more activities, boats drawing a wake that are being slowed down, kids jumping in the water in the middle of the channel. All that sort of thing has been, brought down quite a bit. Not because he's policing like a police officer, but he's saying that's not allowed.
I mean, I'm just wondering how much of a on-water presence we can have at a part-time harbor master. I mean, it's a part-time position that's almost on salary. I mean, there's a small stipend, but it's almost a volunteer position. And it's specified in the harbor management plan that it's a part-time position. How much can we really expect in the way of patrols? And how much impact can that really have if it's...
I agree. I'll let Brian talk to that, but I mean, it says here that, fairly regular with increased regularity on special events such as a blessing, 4th of July, that sort of thing. Is that about right?
Yeah, and yes, and just regular weekends, weeknights, afternoons. And we have now a deputy, John, as well, who can, was a captain in his prior life, which you may not know. A real captain of a commercial vessel, big vessel. Oil barge with oil, oil something. Crude oil. More than qualified to use the boat as well at those times, just to, do weekdays. Just when the people are out, we try to get out. I try to get out,
Yeah.
and be out there as much as I can.
Well, let me ask a question. I mean, Brian's been extremely willing to do this, and he's been
Yeah.
great and had a great on-water presence. So what was we had to hire a new harbor master, and we had to instruct them on what they needed, what their requirement was. What would be the requirement for them to do on-water patrols? I mean, suppose they weren't so willing to do it, we had to say, okay, these are the times you have to be out there. What would that be? Because I think, you know, it's one thing when you have somebody who kind of enjoys doing this, but maybe if you had somebody who didn't, and you had to specify, okay, you need to be out there on Saturdays, you know, blah, blah, blah.
So that should really be in this,
Well, I'm just trying to clarify what we're really,
no, I see your point. Mhm.
You probably have to hire a harbor master when you're interviewing all your candidates. And there were a lot, like for John, the deputy, we had a lot of people apply with varying degrees of, one was a former Coast Guardman who retired. Another was a former cop, I forget where he was, looking for it. And so there's, you have that as part of the job description. It's not just a paperwork shuffling job. We sit at the desk at home and, it's a great.
Yeah, but you're saying that we should have a degree of specificity
That's
as
what I'm
to
talking about, right.
what that is.
It's an expectation, you're saying.
right,
Yeah.
right.
You don't want to go boats if the next guy says, I don't like boats, or I'm not going on the water, and then just sits there. I know what you're saying.
So is it adequate to say that if and when at some point, we will be looking for a new harbor master, right? At that point, we add in the new, specificity as to these dates, you need to be on the water, and those days are, this number of hours on the water. But right now, I think are we happy with the degree of on the water that we're receiving with Brian? Or do we add it now to the harbor master job description with hours? I think you'd want to have some looseness to that, not something written so much in stone either. Maybe you would say that there are, regular time on the water, but rather than increased time on the water during these periods of time, saying, but confirmed or you have a few dates and hours where it is specified. It may be irregular all these other days, but these days it's 10 to 6.
What if they put in like at the discretion of the harbor management committee, and then since they come to a meeting, harbor masters come once a month, you could say, hey, remember, blessing of the fleet's coming up. Gotta get on the water. I mean, nothing real specific like hours, but, right, would that be enough wording or strict enough?
It would be a regular presence with emphasis given to certain events and activities such as blessing of the fleet, 4th of July, fireworks, holidays.
Provide an official presence on the water when possible by regular patrols and with increased presence during events local to the harbor. We could spec that out more. I mean, what John is suggesting is that, we can work together and make it happen and be perfectly comfortable with that. Where, that is perfectly fine until it suddenly doesn't work with some different harbor masters.
I see what Jeff is saying, but if we're gonna specify, 10 to 6 on the water every Saturday in the summer, then we're probably gonna have to pay someone more to do that.
But if you added his suggestion after harbor, if you added with guidance or direction of the harbor management commission, period.
Yeah, you can't be too specific. We can have a rainy
Could be,
Saturday.
that,
Or just a crappy day when no one's gonna go out, and then maybe the next day
Whatever it
you're
is.
gonna be instead, or the night before, and, it's
Jeff?
Does this direction apply to all Fairfield waters, or is it just Southport Harbor? Because the commission only has the jurisdiction over Southport Harbor.
Correct.
Yeah, that was my next comment, because that makes a big difference in the purchase of a boat, because if you're gonna be using this thing outside of Southport Harbor, requires a very different kind of boat than just within the confines of the harbor.
The way I looked at that, and I did think about that, was that, yes, our purview is Southport Harbor. However, the harbor master for Fairfield covers more than just Southport Harbor. So you know, what do? Do we split a boat with Public Works or Parks and Rec? I think it's just a benefit to the town that we can supply without costing the taxpayers, because we're getting the money from the mooring commission.
Yeah, I mean, his jurisdiction goes up Pine Creek, right?
And technically, as Fairfield Harbor Master, when I was appointed, I questioned that, because we never had a Fairfield Harbor Master, it was always Southport. And they changed it, and the governor appointed me as Fairfield and Southport, because DEEP did not have any vessels down this way, and they had no way of watching moorings off of the town's coast. So they said, what we want you to do is from Ash Creek along Fairfield, when there's moorings there, we need to know who's, you need to know whose moorings those are, who owns them, and if, whose boats are on them, and because no one watches them right now at all.
But does that require constant vigilance?
No, I was gonna say no.
Patrol?
No.
I mean,
On a nice day, you can go around the reef, and
but I mean,
check for those moorings.
90% of your time will
It's on
be
this
spent
side,
at Southport
absolutely.
Harbor.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly, yeah. It's not going up the Snorris to go.
Just to drive a peg here, I mean, because we could pull ourselves into a rabbit hole here. Why don't we just simply say that as Don was suggesting, we just add language local to the harbor and
I said under direction from the Harbor Management Commission, period.
and we can develop that if we find that that's not tight enough.
Gee, flexibility.
The
How do
direction
you
you
feel about that?
define as you need to.
You okay with that?
I think so.
Okay. Then why don't we do that, and then, so we'll look at another draft of this, and we'll approve of that at the next meeting, and maybe we'll be farther along with the vote, and then, good. All right, well, thank you very much. Jeff, could you give us an update on the POCD?
I have an email from one of the commissioners, and they still do not have a draft that's ready to pursue to adoption. And so there's the review process, which we understand will be at least 60 days for the Board of Selectmen, and 35 days for the Harbor Management Commission, that hasn't started yet. So we don't know, apparently tonight they're going to discuss the schedule for, the schedule as best they can at the TPC meeting. But right now, there's nothing that's urgent for us to act on. There'll have to be a 60-day notice period when they have the draft for adoption ready, and they don't have that yet.
Okay. Any questions?
65-day notice to a public hearing. Okay.
Any questions on that? Now, the refund of the unused portion of the SHIPS grant is now, you're preparing the documents and the statement to be given to First Selectman, who will then send a letter to the
Port Authority.
Port Authority.
It's very interesting. Well, currently, the Port Authority is reviewing the documents that we sent to see if they'll agree to them. I removed the one invoice that I had on my account, so it's all race engineering. It's interesting, and without vetting, we wouldn't have been able to do this. Went through all of the records. They also wanted the purchase orders that authorized Race to do this work. So we scanned not only Race's invoices, but the proof of the town payment to Race. And then we were asked then also to include the purchase orders that authorized Race to do the work. So that's all in the Port Authority's hands now, and when they get back and tell us, I wonder what would happen if they told us that we have to give all the money back and we can't retain anything, but they haven't indicated that yet. So we provided everything that they've asked for, and it's being reviewed now. And the Finance Department of the Port Authority was appreciative of all the work we've done. The other thing that's interesting, last Friday, the Connecticut Bond Commission met and allocated over $10 million for the round of SHIP grants that were approved last year. And the Port Authority representative that we've been talking with said that they anticipate having another round of grants this year to be announced. and it would behoove us, if we have a project that we think is fundable, the boat isn't though.
No, I think about dredging.
Uh,
I'm sorry.
If we have a project, we should start thinking about it. If there's additional funds that we have for a harbor infrastructure project, that we should start thinking about. Last year, the applications were due on July 1st.
Would that be too tight for us to get something done by?
Well, if we had a project, and then of course, there's different types of projects. There's projects that we have the permits for, and then we would be applying for the construction funds. But there's also projects that the first phase would be engineering and permitting, and I don't know, well, we should give some thought to it.
Well, what projects do we have? We have the Lower Wharf repairs, which is funded. We have the Lower Wharf dredging, which is in the hands of the Parks and Rec.
I just thinking without thinking ahead. One of the projects that we have to work on is with the country club, is to try to come up with some engineered solution or planned solution to slow down the movement of sand over the jetty. That requires some engineering assistance. I'm wondering if that's something that we might apply for a grant to the Port Authority. The problem is it's on private land. But it's something to think about. We're going to need an engineer to help us plan this.
That's probably a fairly long-term project, and you need to finesse that with the country club and all the rest of that. To do that between now and July, whatever. But the dredging which is our next item on the list here, is pretty imminent, and that's going to be a problem pretty quick.
And that was the project that we couldn't do the last time because of the lack of cap. So now we would be going back and applying for a project for money that we just gave back. The money we're giving back was money for that project that we couldn't do. We would have to get the permit again and then go through this. It's interesting.
So we're not going to get a permit by July 1st?
No.
So that's really not a project we can include. But it's really for the Parks and Rec anyway.
Well, we did it the last time for them, though. And the Harbor Commission is the applicant for these.
Can they apply for a SHIP grant?
What's that?
Could the Park Commission even apply for that grant?
Well, I think that's the Harbor Commission's job.
That's what I mean. I wonder if there even could be an applicant.
I don't know if they could.
Why not?
I could ask, but they probably could. They could apply for it. Because I know in Stamford, the Park Department of the Land Use Bureau applied for grants the Harbor Commission held.
Well, Anthony Calabrese is a very busy guy. I mean, it's amazing how many things are under his jurisdiction. I'm sure he wouldn't mind some help if we were to offer it.
Yeah, we could support them in any way. And the town has a grants person that can work on it, right?
They just hired someone?
Good.
We've done them all in the past, but it's just odd that we've given money, we couldn't do this project, and we had to explain to them why, and then we'd be applying for funds to do the project after we give the money back to them. Somewhat odd.
It is.
And channel dredging, because it's a federal channel, would not fall within SHIP grants. That's another project we have to talk about at some point.
That's the next step. The Corps understands that. That's the next project, the outer.
I mean, at the end, the outer channel.
Yeah, the outer channel. So the question is, when we tee that up, I mean, are they going to just do that, or do we have to just request that from them formally? Do they undertake a survey?
I'll ask. It's on their list of things to plan for. But,
it is. Okay.
Is depositing that dredged material that we know is contaminated off of boat ramp at Yacht Yard, that's what we're talking about. We know it's dirty stuff. Is depositing it in a caps location in the Sound the only thing that can be done with it? Can it be transported, this may have come up last week, could it be transported to South Carolina, where we send a lot of garbage?
Well, we discussed that at length, and it requires dewatering. So there would have to be an area reserved at the property there, with berms around it. It would have to be dewatered before it goes into a truck.
Like they did at Exide.
But it would add substantially to the cost of it.
Wow.
And then you have the issue of, one of the reasons we didn't pursue that, well, besides the cost and the space isn't available, would be another fill pile, that someone might take notice of and wonder what's in the fill pile.
Coming back to me now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to de-water the sand, but I mean, couldn't you just load it, rather than putting it on trucks and getting it to someplace else, couldn't you load it onto a barge? I mean, you get 1,200 tons in a barge versus 20 tons in a truck.
What was the volume, though? It can't be that
It's
big
only
a
a
volume.
2,000 cubic yards.
That's what I'm saying, it's not a lot of stuff we're asking, and that's why the barge, it would probably fit on one barge, I would
Oh,
think.
yes.
Easily.
There's a facility in New Jersey that accepts material such as this and mixes it and makes it into construction material.
So maybe that's the answer, is we spec a project like that, where we just take it on a barge and get rid of it. So
But that's not a project we can spec between now and January, or July
Well,
1st.
what do we need by July 1st? Do we need a shovel ready, as they like to say, or do we need just the money to study and to permit?
That was the Obama administration.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Do we ask for another SHIP grant to renew the permit that we previously had and that we expired and we couldn't do the project? I mean, that's something we can talk with them about.
But I think that's the biggest issue we're facing, honestly, is, we know what the dinky docks look like, and they're, I don't know how many times I go down there, and there's no water, or very little water, which at some point, it's not gonna get any better. So.
But the SHIP grant that we had, the $266,000, and engineering did the RFQ, or, the purchasing of it, that wasn't enough in any way to barge that material to New Jersey to process it. That was for taking it to central Long Island Sound and then dumping it and having another project cap it. Well, we could.
You're gonna have to ask.
Yeah, I'll ask. It'll be interesting,
Yeah.
we're giving the money back and now we're asking you to give us another round of it, but we certainly can ask.
Okay, so that covers the items 6 and 7, really, the dock dredging, and any further questions or comments on that?
Take it to Greenland.
Once we own it.
Any further comments on the your dredging and the SHIP grant, return refund? Moving on now to the final item on our old business is the harbor management plan update.
We met today, we will meet again before the next meeting, we're making progress. We have, our effort to update and to take out what's already been accomplished and to add new material, especially we're going to focus on, given the new substitute bill in the legislature, and the Cohen case that suggests that the only time that the Harbor Commission can comment, Commission's comments can be taken seriously by DEEP is if the content of the project content has been mentioned in the plan. We are beginning to think about all of the possible projects that are in and around the harbor that might be the subject of requests to DEEP for construction, and hope to include some of those ideas in the plan. But it's a massive undertaking, and we're about halfway done, I would say. It still would have to go to DEEP for their approval, and then to the RTM for their approval. So while we're halfway done in terms of the writing it, the PR piece of it, and moving it through the approval process haven't even started that yet, so we're moving along.
Any questions? Do we have any new business for today? New applications? I don't think we have any. I'm not sure if anybody's remained online for public comment, but would anybody like to make public comment?
Mr. McLaughlin is in the back, I don't know if he...
I don't have anything to say, no.
Could I speak? We're working on a paper for the Corps of Engineers relating the history of Southport Harbor with the history of the Corps of Engineers. So we're asking if we can go down and talk with the person, the research person at the Pequot Library, about presentation we put and whether they have any additional information we can use. But again, it's related to the 250th anniversary of the Corps of Engineers, beginning at the Battle of Bunker Hill in 1775. And it's very interesting that the Corps' mission evolved from not just wartime stuff, but then navigation and commerce. The first law that authorized surveys of navigation for navigation purposes apparently was in 1826. And the first survey in Southport Harbor was 1826 as well. So it's really interesting. And we also had some information on the first hydraulic dredge that the Corps used. And this is like in Mississippi someplace, in the long time ago. And I asked the project manager, our project manager here, if she could search for photographs of that first dredge and compare it to what was used here earlier this year. Really an interesting historical perspective of how the mission evolved from, again, the Revolutionary War and the first, you'll see it when we...
Great, thank you. Any questions? Any last comments? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Betty, for all the stuff that you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.